Hi guys! So today I'll be discussing the movie Fair Game and its relevance to the ongoing conflict between America and the Middle East, especially Iraq. I will also be using the supporting text I have chosen, written by the US Newswire, to show the reality behind the movie supported by the information I gathered from the reading. The ongoing invasion and occupation in Iraq by the American military has been one of the most imperialist crimes in the modern day. The reality of this movie was seen to be quite specific in regards to the American government and Bush administration only taking issues as a threat rather than a problem that can have an easier solution. The movie showed different aspects and attributes of how the war with Iraq had already been ongoing. However, the Bush administration decided to pinpoint the reasoning behind the tension on the Yellowcake uranium, which supposedly had been taken by Iraq to create mass destruction weapons. For this was the loyalty to the civilians, the military, and American democracy. It shows that the government doesn't always have the best interest for the civilians due to the power trip of wanting to always be ahead and on top of whatever is happening, especially in trade, military, and foreign policies. The movie Fair Game, directed by Doug Liman, is about two married CIA agents who are passionate in what they do and the service they provide for their country. The wife, Valerie, goes undercover for a mission to locate any type of information or leads that might be beneficial for the American intelligence from the Middle East. On the other hand, Joseph Wilson, the husband, is chosen to go find out information on a tip that was given about Iraq purchasing large amounts of uranium from an African city for nuclear weapons. However, when Joseph explains that there is no clear evidence of Iraq purchasing uranium for weapons of mass destruction, especially on an editorial page, this causes someone from the White House to leak the identity of his wife Valerie, who had been currently on a mission undercover. The movie then turns into a series of problems these two characters had to face, fighting for their liberation from their own country, who had now turned their backs on them for simply following orders. The critical insight of this movie was quite realistic. Even though the movie obviously had more glitz and glamour because of the Hollywood setting, but the message was very clear, especially with the events throughout the movie had been quite factual to what had happened during the Bush administration. The reality within the movie is very similar to what actually happened to the real Valerie and Joseph by the US government and how their loyalty to their country had been questioned. It showed that the core responsibility for these two agents was to provide honest factual information for their country, but it then turned out to be a game where the US government, especially the seniors in the Bush administration, only wanted to pick and choose what they wanted to hear and what they did not. This then caused controversy amongst the public and their feelings towards the way the US government had been hiding certain information. This obviously started putting doubts in their minds, for the government's job was to provide and protect for their country, but it seemed like the senior officials were more interested in being competitive rather than being on top of the situation and coming up with solutions for the problem. The supporting text I have chosen is written by the US Newswire. I found the reading very interesting as it talks about the overview of what the Bush administration's real concerns were instead of what it should have been. It also explains the way the government had used media to sell the idea to civilians that the Middle East, Iraq, and Saddam were the ones calling for war, and if they are not stopped, then nothing good will come out of this for the Western powers. There was no clear reasoning of uranium being sold to Iraq, and that the only piece of evidence that had been found was forged. However, the US intelligence had taken that as a threat, even though they did not look into the paperwork to see if it was accurate or not. Instead, the media had been notified about the documentation, and that Iraq was involved, and that uranium was involved. So they only had one answer to the problem, which was that Iraq was preparing for war with nuclear weapons and they had to be stopped. The US government were trying to portray to have their best interests for their country, for they wanted to get rid of any threats that could harm their nation. However, what the reading and the movie are trying to explain is that the conflict between Iraq and America was an ongoing matter. The Yellowcake uranium was just a cover-up to have a good enough reason to invade the Middle East and claimed the US military was only there to stop Saddam and to provide them with democracy. These types of wars will always be around. The core and logical responsibility is to bring peace. However, then the political game would become too easy and somewhat less challenging. So taking into account the two sources as well as the ongoing debate about the war between America and the Middle East, there never will be a clear answer in what has to be done to stop this conflict. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.